Hey there, y'all, and welcome to the kitchen. Today, we're going to turn a pound of ground beef into a delicious Italian dinner. This is my recipe for pasta fagioli. It is a yummy soup that has a lot of really good shortcut tricks in there that gets a yummy, big pot of soup on your table in just under 30 minutes. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with browning our beef, and then I'll talk you through everything else. So I'm going to get my heat on about medium high. I always tell my students that are in the kitchen with me every single week, on my stove, medium high is an 8. It goes all the way up to 10, so I go to 8 when I say medium high. And then I'm just going to get this beef into my pan for it to start browning. Anytime you're browning meat, you never want to stop the process at just cooked. You want it to have a little extra color on there. So we're going to cook this about 5 minutes, I would say, in some olive oil before we add any liquids to the pot. We're going to go ahead and add our vegetables and all that in there too, but you don't need to have a lot of liquid in there because that slows down your browning process. Okay, so I'm going to get a tiny bit of oil in the bottom of my pan. This is 90% lean beef. You can use whatever you have on hand. I'm going to use a little avocado oil. I like olive oil and avocado oil the best. That's a lot in my mouth to say out loud, but it's really up to you, whatever oil you have on hand. These have the best health benefits and the perfect flavor for this. So 1 pound of ground beef is all we need. And it's going to start sizzling in just a second. And while we do that, I'm going to rinse off my hands and start chopping my veg. Now, when we do shortcut suppers, I always give you all of the grocery store and meal prep tips that you need to get there in a hurry. But sometimes I do want to give you a little lesson on how to do things the proper way. So in case you are meal prepping over the weekend before you're even watching our episode together, you know how to do this the best way. So you can buy carrot, celery, and onion in the produce section already chopped for you. You can also buy pre-chopped carrots, onion in their freezer section, and sometimes celery as well, depending on where you're shopping. It doesn't quite freeze as well, so I usually have to find it in the produce section. It's usually only in blends. It's hard to find in a bag by itself. So if you find a blend of carrot, celery, and onion in a bag, by all means, buy that and use that and cut out the prep of these 3 ingredients. But these 3, I want to show you how to chop because they're things that you're going to do all of the time if you're cooking regularly. So celery, I want to show you this. It says in the recipe 2 stalks, but I have 3 here because these are really little hearts, and I always use the leaves. Don't throw those leaves away. They are absolutely packed with flavor, so you don't want to waste those. They are an essential ingredient, and I have even before used them as a salad, like the leaves of the celery in with my salad and my lettuces, because it just has so much delicious fresh flavor. So I'm moving my beef around just a little bit, and we're going to start getting the rest of our veggies in there. So anytime you're chopping anything, you're going to rock on your board with the motion of the ocean. So I'm going to just go through these hearts 1 time down the middle so my pieces aren't too big, and then I'm going to line them up in a row. Anytime you're chopping multiples of something, you want to do that so you have to pass through less times and do less work with each motion. So we're going to chop them down to where they're even right here, and then we're going to go through with the motion of the ocean. My fingers on this hand curled under, and all of my fingers on the actual knife handle. This is not the position you want to be in. You want to have most control that you possibly can have, and that's that position right there. And we're rocking with the motion of the ocean, like a boat on the water. And as you get to the leaves, you just kind of bunch them together a little bit in your fingers, just so you can pass through them easily. I love to use these leaves like an herb too, as a garnish, like in place of parsley sometimes if I don't have parsley on hand. I love to use the celery leaves. All right, got passed through those, and we're going to get them in with our beef. And there's already some good browning going on the bottom of our meat. I can see that. And before I move it around, I want that to start, because the more you move it around, the more it slows down that process. Now, we have some baby carrots. You can use 2 whole carrots. I'm going to use about 12 baby carrots for this recipe. And anytime I'm cutting them, I like to line them up in a little row. This little guy doesn't necessarily need to be halved, but it's the safest thing to do to half them and get one side flat so you have a carrot that's not running around the cutting board trying to get away from you. Okay, so we're going to half these. And again, when I pass through it 1, I can be passing through 4. So we're going to do this lined up like this. Might can do 6. Let's see. Let's see if I can do 6. Oh yeah, I can definitely do 6 with my fingers curled under. If you've got a big carrot, all you have to do is cut it in half long ways and then half it again to have a flat side, and you'll get the same result, and that's 2 carrots. Or like I said, if you're going to do the bag, you just need a bag of these veggies to throw in the pot. The equivalent of 1 onion is what we're going to use. So that's basically the breakdown. 2 big celery stalks if they're full size, 3 if they're small, 2 whole carrots, and then 1 onion. Move this around just a little bit because I can smell the browning happening, and that is good news. You often don't think of a good sear or a browning when you're thinking of something like a soup. But this part of the process is so important for building flavor. You don't want to skip it. You want to make sure that you have that searing going on the bottom of your pan because it will enhance the flavor of everything else that you're doing. All right, so I'm going to go in with my other few carrots. I think I want about 2 or 3 more, so I'm going to do that real quick. And then we're going to do some onion talk. Now, onions, I will say, of all the shortcut items at the grocery store, when somebody realizes that you can buy a pre-chopped onion in the freezer section, that's usually the biggest hug that I get when I tell them that that lives there. I have had people older than me that did not know that they were in there literally say, Lauren, that has changed my life. It has changed my whole entire life. And it's not that they can't chop. It's just that who wants to worry about tears? And you don't have to have a lot of tears. There's ways around that. But as a general rule, there are some tears involved in the onion department, usually. I actually got a red onion last week on a whim, and I was so thankful I was not teaching when I got it because it was so powerful. I had to walk away. And my oldest son came in the kitchen. He goes, whoa, I can smell that one from here. And I was like, I know. It happens. Okay, so onion, you're going to take off the root end and the hairy end for this application. If you struggle keeping your onion together to chop, you can keep the root end on and discard it at the end because that will stabilize your layers of onion for you as you chop. But I'm going to show you the way that I normally do it. So we take the hairy end off and take the root end off. And I've got a garbage bowl that I keep to the side so I don't have to run to the trash can a million times. So that's where you see those things going. And then I cut it in half. Again, always looking for a place to get it nice and stable and flat. And I'm taking off this top layer. And the one that comes off easily and then leaves you with perfect onion underneath, that's the last layer that you need to take off. You don't need to keep going. You don't need to peel every single layer and wonder when to stop. Okay, so we're going to go through this way one time, and then we're going to turn it and go through the other way. So the way that it looks like a half of a moon, I'm going to hold my hand like this, and we're going to pass through 3 or 4 times. And then I'm going to turn it on its side, and we're going to curl our fingers under and go through this way. Once you get to this point, you can rock forward for more stability again and get the last few pieces of onions. And there we go. Our onion is chopped and ready to go in the pot. If you've got a few bigger pieces, you can grab those real quick, just with your knife. See, the tears are coming, but they're not terrible. I better get this other one in there so I don't have to cut. I might still have to cut. Okay. A sharp knife does help, and I need to sharpen mine. It's been a couple of weeks since Richard has sharpened mine. And as much as I cook, he does have to sharpen it more than most. But this is a really good knife, and I always link this below because he does not have to sharpen it as much because it is fairly newer. If you've had your knife for more than 5 years, though, it's probably time for a new one, just so you know. All right, I'm getting my veggies all down in there. I think I'm good just to wipe up my tears a little bit and wipe off my board. That's another thing. Anytime you've cut an onion on your cutting board, you want to rinse your knife. Almost did it. Just put it away. And wipe down your board, or you can just flip your board over. That's totally fine too. But just getting the rest of that onion juice away will help. Now, like I said, Those all are in the grocery store for shortcut options. Or if you've meal prepped the weekend before, you should just have all those things already chopped. And that would take you seconds instead of the minutes that we stood here and talked to each other about chopping. Now, time for some spices to go into the pot. We got some really great browning on here, and that is exactly what we want to see. So now we need to salt our veggies and our meat so the veggies start to release their liquids. Anytime that you have anything vegetable in your pot, there is liquid that lives in that vegetable, and salt is what's going to draw it out. So I'm going to go in with a tablespoon of salt at this point because we have not seasoned at all yet. So this is our first opportunity. And the moisture that's going to come out of the vegetables is actually going to start deglazing that browning off the bottom of our pan. Our tomatoes and our stock are going to help us finish that process, but this is the first step. I'm going to put in a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of garlic powder, and you see I'm measuring the palm of my hand because that's a tablespoon. If you've watched me for long, you've already known that. And then I'm going to go in with a tablespoon of oregano, or you can use Italian seasoning, whatever you have on hand. We do have another herby bomb going in here in a minute, and it's a very good shortcut thing to have on hand, but we'll talk about that next. Okay, my dry spices need to go in at this point because the heat wakes up the dried spices that have been sleeping in that jar for a long time and makes them taste again like they're supposed to. Any kind of time you have something that's been in a jar a long time, it needs to get on that heat. Or you can rub it like this between the palm of your hands, and that wakes it up as well. Now I'm going to go in with a teaspoon of black pepper here and stir my spices in. All right, we're good and seasoned. Now, I'm knocking things off. Got it. We're going to stir this in, and as soon as all that hits the heat, you're going to smell it become wildly fragrant, and you know that good things are happening. The salt is starting to help the onions release some moisture because when I do this on the bottom of the pan, the browning is starting to come up. But now we can get the rest of our tomato stuff in there so we can get the flavors building. Now, tomato paste is not a lot of liquid. It's just concentrated tomato flavor. I need 2 tablespoons of that. So I get that in at this point for the same reason that I got in the herbs that were dried early on in the process. It wakes up the tomato flavor to get it close to the heat before there's a lot of moisture into the pot. So that goes in. I'm going to make sure it gets mixed into all my meat. And you can also buy tomato paste in a tube if you don't want to open a can every time, but I use it so much that even if I just use 2 tablespoons for that today, I'm going to use the rest of that can for something later this afternoon or tomorrow. All right. Then I'm going to put in some diced tomatoes. This is going to have a little bit more moisture in it, obviously, because it's packed in liquid. And those diced tomatoes are going to be our biggest first opportunity to really get stuff off the bottom of the pot. And get those worked in there. And the reason I'm stopping here before adding any more liquid in, because these diced tomatoes do need a chance to break down a little bit on this higher heat before we simmer our soup together. Okay, so those are going. And now for the moment of truth. I'm going to add in my marinara sauce, which is a shortcut helper here. We would have had to build a lot more tomato sauce flavor if we didn't have that marinara sauce on hand. So we're going to put in a jar of your favorite marinara. At this point, we've got Classico today. I love Classico. Sometimes I do a tomato basil in this, and that works as well. But let's see if I can get it open because my husband is not home. We were just talking yesterday about needing one of those things that helps you open jars. Hey, I got that easily. No problems here. So I've got this, and I've got some stock that I'm going to put in as well. You can use a carton of beef stock, but you're just going to need a quart of stock. This is my homemade that we prepped over the weekend. You could also use the box you get in the grocery store, or you can use 4 cups of water and 2 tablespoons of beef bouillon, which is just really hearty beef flavor. So I'm going to go in with my marinara sauce, and we never throw away our jar at this point. We always put about 1/4 of a cup of water in there. Our lid goes back on. and we give it a shake because there is a lot of tomato sauce still left behind in this jar. So that's going to go in there. Now, I have the equivalent of 2 cans of cannellini beans. I also did these over the weekend. So a quart of cannellini beans, or you can use Great Northern, is about to go in there as well. But this is my stock. And because it's homemade, it's got that really rich flavor and color. If you've got your beef stock and you feel like it doesn't have as much flavor as you would like for it to have, you can still add a teaspoon or so of beef base to your purchased beef stock to really help that flavor be developed a little bit more. So I'm going to go in with all of my broth, and we are going to make, this has pasta in it. So you are going to notice, obviously it's soup, it's going to have a lot of liquid, but we also need enough liquid in there to cook our pasta. So I'm going to stir this around and really make sure all of those yummy bits are off the bottom of the pan. That is an ingredient in itself, the browning at the bottom of the pan, for all this time that we're taking to do that. Really, we've only been doing this for about 15 minutes together, and that flavor is going to taste like we've done it for hours long because we were patient and took the right steps at the beginning of the process. So now I'm going to add in my beans, and you're about to find out the other secret ingredient to this. These beans have a little tiny bit of liquid in this, but I cooked these. I know it's just really good salt in there. That's all it is. So I don't necessarily have to drain these, but they are not completely covered in liquid. So if you're buying canned beans, do 2 cans of cannellini beans drained, okay? Or Great Northern. I'm going to use my spoon. Here's a little hint to help you get this in the pan without splashing. If you catch your stuff a little bit like that before it hits the water and let it ease in slowly, it doesn't splash up hot stuff on you like it normally would. I've learned that the hard way. Okay, now my ingredient that I have yet to tell you about. This is prepared pesto. And the good news is I meal prepped this over the weekend, but it is always on the shelf right near your marinara sauce in your pasta aisle. So you can use this. This is the secret ingredient to this soup. Marinara sauce and pesto give this the flavor that you're going to be like, oh, wow, that's a flavor-packed soup. It's the thing that takes you straight to Italy. So I make my pesto very simply with lemon juice, parsley, basil, garlic, and Parmesan cheese. Some people put pine nuts in there. I don't necessarily keep those on hand a lot. So if I've got them, they can go in, but I don't really need them, especially for this. And I also a lot of times take that recipe, add a couple handfuls of spinach to it, and do a spinach pesto, and my children don't even know they're eating spinach. So there's a tip for that. So I'm going to take 2 big tablespoons of my prepared pesto, and I'm going to get it into my pot, and it's going to make this be so flavorful. And then after that, we've got to get the pasta in, and all we've got to do is wait for the pasta to cook for it to be done. If you want to simmer this a long time to develop flavor, absolutely you can do that. The only 2 things that you're going to need to know are you'll need to watch the liquid level, and you may need to add a little bit more stock or water as the process goes. If you want to simmer this a couple hours, that would not hurt a thing at this point, to where you just need to watch the water level. If you are going to do that, I would simmer it on low, covered, so it does not lose a lot of its liquid. And that way, you're not as concerned about, if being on low, you're not concerned about it overflowing. But number 2, you're not going to be concerned about it losing too much of its liquid because it's covered. Now, at this point, though, that's when I would say you can cover it, go on, and then come back. But when you're ready to eat it, you need the final 2 ingredients, and that is ditalini pasta, or any small cut pasta that you like, and some Parmesan cheese for serving, because I mean, it's Italian. So this is a very small pasta. Ditalini is traditional for what this recipe calls for, but you are like, if you've got elbows on hand or shells, I've done it with shells. Actually, the first time I ever made this, I made it for some sweet friends of ours in Tennessee who have loved on us so big over the years, and they were going through a hard time. And I just made this this soup for them, because he is a man that doesn't care for chicken. And she was like, I need something new because I'm tired of making the whole thing, all the beef things I've made for all these years. So anyway, long story short, I made this pasta fagioli for them. A, they were like, what even is this? And B, she was like, this is delicious and easy. So that's a new beef meal to have on hand. But when I had that, everything to do it, I didn't have this ditalini pasta, and I did it with shells. This is the shape. You just have these teeny tiny little shapes. And so you want to cook this right when you're about to eat your soup. So I'm going to put this in now. It's going to cook for about, I think it's an 8-minute cook time, and that is all it is. And then I'll show you how to serve it. But if you've got it to this point, you can do this in the morning before you go to work. You can put it at this point into a crock pot and let it go on low all day. You just don't want to add the pasta in until you're ready to eat it. So for me, for this pot, you could even, if you wanted to help yourself, really, you could cook this separately in salted cooking water and just put pasta in the bottom of your soup bowl whenever somebody's eating it, and spoon the soup over the top of it, and that would keep your pasta from overcooking. So I'm going to only use half of this pound of pasta in my dish and use the other half for another soup another day. So just about half of this box, which is half a pound of pasta, is going in, and I eyeball everything. But here we are. Okay, that's going in, and then I'm going to stir that around and just let it do its thing. And because this pasta is actually cooking in the soup itself, it's going to be packed with so much flavor. The only thing I have to do now before we put that lid on is taste my seasoning to make sure there's enough salt. Y'all, the flavor of that pesto is so on point in that dish. You'd be shocked what those 2 tablespoons do. I'm going to put in another teaspoon or so of salt here at this point. And you have to taste to know, because obviously canned beans are going to come salted, and all kind of have different salt levels based on what you're buying. That's why you have to use your taster. Number 1, it's your number 1 kitchen tool. Number 2 is your hands. Taster in your hands. So you can do almost anything with those. Okay, so I'm going to let this cook for about 8 minutes, and then I'll show you how we serve it in just a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, y'all, we're back, and it has been about 8 or 9 minutes, and our pasta fagioli looks amazing. Smells fantastic. So I'm going to serve up a bowl in just a second, but I want to show you how I'm going to garnish it. I've got a little parsley left from making pesto this weekend, so I'm just going to chop through that to really get that pretty on top. You could even use your pesto and stir in a dollop right as you're serving it to freshen it up a little bit. I think I might do that. And I've got a big old thing of Parmesan cheese. We keep this bad boy on hand. And I also like to keep freshly grated sometimes too. I use those rinds in soups and stews. So don't throw your Parmesan rinds away if you've got your grated Parmesan cheese. So I'm going to serve myself up some, and then we're going to just talk a few minutes about a couple things. My knife that I have here, I always link it below because I feel like people need to have a good, affordable knife on hand. So if you ever want to get a knife like mine, I've got a set linked below that's this knife and one that's slightly smaller. Both come with a cover, which I really like because I travel with my knife. So that's linked below. You can get it there. And I also want to tell you, I have stainless steel pots and pans linked below because I always say my favorite go-tos are stainless steel and cast iron skillets. I'm really trying to get away from anything that's got a coating on it for health reasons. We're finding out that can get in your food if you're not using the right tools and the way of cleaning it. So I always want to link in some good stainless steel pots for y'all down there as well if you are in need of that in your kitchen. You'll also find a link down there for my Shortcut Suppers cookbook that comes with 15 episodes just like this, but also every meal has a recipe card with a grocery list and all that, like you would get if you were taking notes, and then it's my tips and all that, just like a cookbook. You can digitally download it, print it off if you want it, or it can always just live in your phone. So you can pick a meal, watch me do it, take your downloaded grocery list to the grocery store and not even have to think about it. So that could live in your phone, and you could have me in your back pocket at any point. And then I also always link in Mama Whitten's Kitchen in there. If you ever have a reason that you would like to take practical cooking lessons, that's what I do every single week in my cooking school, virtually over Zoom, and I love doing it. So I'll link all those things below. First thing I'm going to do before I serve is chop up my parsley just a little bit, just like we did with the Motion of the Ocean earlier on our veggies. Not too tiny, because I do like those pretty parsley flakes. And honestly, I also need to probably get this into the bowl so it can cool and not burn my mouth off while I'm trying to taste it. My pasta is cooked just perfectly, but like I said, if you're not going to eat this right now, don't cook the pasta until you are ready to serve the meal. You want it to be an ingredient in this soup, not the star of the show. It definitely is not going to be like a pasta dish. This is a soup with pasta in it. So you still have a lot of beautiful liquid down there in your pot. This is borderline a stew. But when I was first learning to cook, somebody that I watched would say there's a halfway in between thing she would call a stoop. And maybe that's what this is. Because a stew, you should be able to put your spoon up and it stand up. And we're not there. But it also is pretty thick in the broth department. So I would say it's a stew. Halfway between a soup and a stew. Okay. So I'm going to get some yummy, yummy parsley over top. And like I said, I want to go in with a little more pesto. But that's just me. This is totally preference here. I'm not going totally off the rails. This is an ingredient in the soup. Pesto is really one of my favorite things. I love to put it just right over grilled chicken or grilled chicken pizza. Pesto on it. Just do a dollop like that. And then we're going to look like snow. Do some Parmesan cheese on top. Like I said, if you have that fresh grated, you get that grater out and you just go and make yourself a little mountain like they do in the restaurants. But this is delicious. This actually looks like Christmas to me and would be a really, really good holiday meal for a crowd when you've had your fill of the ham and the turkey and all that, and you just want something comforting and easy that still looks beautiful and impressive. And that's exactly what this does. I'm going to blow this because Lord knows it's going to be hot. I don't think I could waste enough time for it to be really cool, but we're just going to try to get it palatable. Okay. Mmm. Mmm. So good. And it crosses that boundary from comforting to fresh in your mouth because you've got that hit of the fresh pesto right there at the end. That herbiness in there is amazing. And the pasta is cooked just al dente. And my beans, y'all, I'm a bean girl. I love beans. This all came from a pound of ground beef. I think you might want to add this one to your next get big pasta night plan because a lot of this goes a really long way to serve a crowd. Happy cooking, y'all. I'm going to finish eating this. See you next time.